As we've been reporting, hundreds of congressional races have already been called, but not enough for either party to officially take the majority in either chamber.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to each of those individual seats. Yeah. 5 Senate and more than 40 House races are still up in the air as we wait for more votes to be counted. As it stands in the House, Democrats have 190 seats, Republicans 203. A party needs 218 to be in the majority. We're estimating that will likely be the Republicans.
Now, in the Senate, 4 uncalled races will determine which party holds the slim majority there. And we likely won't know the fate of the Senate for another month, with the race in Georgia expected to go to a runoff.
Ashley Etienne and Kevin Sheridan join us now. Kevin is a former RNC spokesperson and was a senior advisor for Romney Ryan back in 2012. Ashley's a CBS News political contributor and a former communications director for Vice President Kamala Harris and Speaker Pelosi. It's good to have both of you with us.
Yes.
Kevin, let's go ahead and start with you, because Republicans had really not just been hoping for, they've been expecting a much more decisive set of wins last night than what we're seeing. Why did they underperform expectations?
Yeah, let's just say it as it is. It's a big disappointment, and actually it's a failure, given that all the trends were going in the right direction for Republicans. These candidates just didn't deliver, and I think candidate quality was a big reason for that. I think there's going to be a lot of recriminations and finger pointing. We'll see how it shakes out. It looks like we'll probably keep the House and maybe have a chance at the Senate. So basically, the Biden legislative agenda is now probably stopped if they can just hold on to the House at least. But the Republican Party is going to have to do some soul searching on what went wrong. They're going to be fingers pointed at Republican leadership, NRCC, Kevin McCarthy, but most of all, probably at Mar-a-Lago and Donald Trump's interference or insertion into picking candidates in the primaries. And so the cake was maybe baked from the day that those candidates won their races.
It's interesting, as Kevin calls this a failure, Ashley, because for Democrats who are now using the term, hey, cautiously optimistic, since some of these results began rolling in, there are still some previously Democratic seats that have already flipped red, and Republicans are on track to take control of the House when this is all said and done. So how will losing the House impact the next 2 years of the Biden administration from your view, and the party as a whole, considering that outcome?
Well, let's just take a step back. I mean, there were predictions. I think the Republicans were popping champagne bottles well before the polls even closed, predicting a big red wave, and we didn't see one last night. President Biden, no matter how this whole thing turns out, will get the credit, as well as Speaker Pelosi and the whole of the Democratic Party, for really holding off a red wave. But it's to the credit of the American people. I think they saw right through it. They've rejected the politics of division, rejected election denialism. They rejected the McCarthy's agenda of payback politics. Right? I think the sense and the mood from the country is that they want no more of this. They want us to work together. And credit to President Biden, he has done that in a really robust, big way. I mean, big bills in a bipartisan way on guns, veterans' health care, the infrastructure bill. So we can do things together. And this really creates an opportunity for us to demonstrate to the American people that we can continue down that path, that we can rise above politics and do what's in their best interest. And that's what they really want from us. So again, I think it is the Republicans' choice. They can choose. They either want to go down the path of payback politics, or they can choose to go down this path, which we've been down for the past 2 years, which is finding ways to work together to solve these big problems and make sure that the country is competitive in the world.
Well, what about that point, Kevin? Because Lana and I were joking earlier that, like, wow, consensus would be a wonderful thing to see out of Congress.
Absolutely.
But to Ashley's point, Democrats with inflation high, gas prices high, and history against them when it comes to being the party in the White House and the opposition gaining in the House, they really do seem to have been able to stand on policy. So if Republicans take control of the House, Kevin McCarthy has already said that the potential House Speaker, there'll be investigations. We're going to look into everything the Biden administration has done. Isn't there a benefit to perhaps building on what's already been done?
Well, the American people are still very dissatisfied with the direction of the country. I think 70% say it's on the wrong track. So I'm not sure how much of an endorsement of Democrat policies or the last 2 years this election actually was. I think it was more dynamics of the candidate quality, some of the issues from 2020 coming back up. And so I think once Republicans get into the House and take control there, they're going to be a check on the Biden administration. They may find areas to work together. I hope they work on unleashing, unlocking American energy, for instance, or getting some more money to the border, or some issues that they can find some common ground on. I'm not too optimistic because this is a pretty divided town still, and for 2 years, Democrats have had their way. They've done everything they wanted to. They've gotten everything they wanted passed, and despite last night's election, the American people are still not happy with where things are going in America.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing, that this town doesn't have to be divided. We choose to be divided, right? McCarthy could say, we're gonna shelve all this momentum and enthusiasm for investigations. He could make that decision. He could say, we campaigned on crime and inflation and the border, and now we're gonna work with our colleagues in both chambers and the president to solve those problems. He could actually make that decision. That's why I say the choice is theirs. We don't have to be at odds here in Washington, D.C. There's been plenty of times where we've worked and divided government has worked in the interest of the people. So we have that choice. But again, it's for McCarthy to make that decision. If he wins, I mean, there's still a possibility that they may not hold the House.
Sure.
There's still a possibility. But, Kevin, as you were saying that most Americans feel like the country is going in the wrong direction, that seems to be something that people feel, to Ashley's point, across the board about both parties. And we hear that a lot as journalists, that they don't like what the Republicans have done. They don't like what the Democrats have done. And as I'm listening to what you're saying, Ashley, I recall you saying actually prior to last night and getting some of these results that you felt like Democrats would have benefited from even leaning in more to bipartisanship. That one of the things that you said that you wish that you had seen more from President Biden was more of a discussion of bipartisanship. So if Republicans did take the House and the Senate, both of which are possibilities, but with only a loose hold, do you think that there will be a way for this White House to work effectively with the Republicans in Congress? Because it requires both sides to actually say, we're going to come together. And we have not seen that in a really long time.
Well, I mean, as I said, oh, sorry. Were you asking me or Kevin?
I'm asking you, Ashley, and then I'll let Kevin give his final thought on that as well.
No, it's fine. I mean, President Biden has demonstrated that he can work across the aisle. He has. I mean, we've passed, give credit to Congress. We've passed big bills together. So that's possible. I worked in the House on the Oversight Committee in 2012 ahead of Barack Obama's reelection. We did the Republicans, through everything they had at Obama, they leaned in on investigations, and it actually backfired. That was the time we did Benghazi, Solyndra, Fast and Furious, and it backfired on them. Barack Obama won a second term. So I just would caution the Republican Party. I think after last night, they got to go back to the drawing board. They got to do some self-examination and figure out exactly what happened, and get a sense from the American public what their expectation of it is.
That's a perfect opportunity for Kevin very quickly to tell us whether you think that this possibility of bipartisanship is a real one.
Yeah, I mean, given the challenges that the country's facing, I certainly hope so. I certainly hope that they both come to the table on energy, for instance, and admit that we need more of it and we need to produce our own here. I think they have to admit that we have a border crisis. So if they can get anything going on those two fronts, that would be an amazing, bipartisan moment. Am I optimistic? I've been around here a little too long.
That's okay.
Be optimistic,
We'll try to be optimistic.
Everybody, cross your fingers, your toes, your legs, all of it. Kevin Sheridan and Ashley Etienne, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.